go back to why you're doing this. What is your why? You're going to say, because I feel better. Okay, but why? We think that you're going to have this confidence and this, newfound happiness by hitting a certain weight. That's not true. Are you someone who has fallen into a diet, lost weight, went back to the way you ate before, then gained the weight back, and then decided to do that over and over and over again? Well, if so, welcome to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast. In today's episode, we're going to talk about why you need to stop yo-yo dieting and the truth about how yo-yo dieting affects long-term weight loss. So if you're ready, listen up and lean in as we elevate your mind. Welcome.
Hello.
I'm in the studio. Amanda's at home because for those of you who have not seen, my father is in the hospital. So we're just trying to make this work for the time that I'm away from the hospital. Thank you to everyone who has given their positive thoughts and prayers. It's been a very crazy weekend, but we are out of the woods. So
Yay.
should be out of ICU. And they put in orders this morning. His nurse, oh my gosh. So he had a procedure, a biopsy on his lungs. He has stage 4 lung cancer, and there is he went into sepsis. There was some sort of infection. So they had to go in the lungs and biopsy what was in there. And that ultimately put him in ICU. They didn't think that he'd be off of his tube at all. There was a chance my father would not have been able to, he would have passed away if he wouldn't have been able to get off that tube because he's a do not resuscitate. However, this man was like,
not yet.
What tube? Yeah. What tube? And he literally had the tube out within the hour of the procedure. He was on oxygen. Now his oxygen levels, obviously, they also took out a half liter of fluid from his lungs.
Wow.
So that helped him breathe more. And so he's been up and down. He's finally, all the things. So they cleared him to go to a normal room, but because it's Sunday, they don't know if there's a room available. So I have to check in on that. So with that said, I wasn't sure what tomorrow, Monday, is going to look like when we usually record. So thank you, Amanda and baby Livy. And you're going to get to hear some coos.
Yeah. And you might hear some poo-poo.
We love poo-poo.
Yeah. So we're going to try and bust this out.
Yeah. So for today's episode, we're just going to get right into it. I don't think people realize that the long-term effects of yo-yo dieting and not realizing what that does to your body, your metabolism, your body's trust in you. And they just keep repeating the cycle over and over again. And as time goes on, it gets harder and harder for them to lose weight. I've experienced this in myself as I've gotten older. And I think sometimes that we think that it's our metabolism, which yes, it is, but our metabolism because we're getting older, not the fact that we've kind of fucked ourselves in the way that we've done this.
Yeah.
And there is a method to get back to a great place. And we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm glad we're having this conversation because the call that I had with the new client this week, she was concerned that she was entering into menopause, and based on her age, she might be. And I told her, I'm not going to discount that, but a lot of the things that you're doing certainly don't help. And so if you're always kind of in this weight loss period, and I always tell clients this, whether you're mentally there or actually there, it doesn't matter because you're still trying to restrict calories and there's still an intention behind what you're trying to do with food. And so I'll see this common complaint in, we'll say the 40 plus clients of, I just can't lose weight anymore. It's just not the same. And I'm kind of I'm not going to discount that, just like I told this client, but you restricting your calories constantly is not helping. And honestly, we probably need more nourishment at this point just to help get your body to where you want it to go, that it'll be something that is worth your investment, right? And I told this similar client that's now going to work with us, give me 4 months. You've been doing this for 15 years. If in 4 months you find that it's not working, great. You can go back to what's not working for you currently, right? But, but give
Love
it
it.
4 months and let's just see what happens. And it's going to be hard. What we're going to talk about today is going to be hard for some people to listen to. They may not find that this doesn't yet apply to them, but I would challenge that listener to say, just think of this with an open mind, as I do with all of our topics that we talk about.
Well, it's also, if you're someone who's like, this doesn't apply to me yet, don't let it.
Yes.
Don't be the person who, gets to a place where it's almost impossible to lose weight because now we're insulin resistant, or our body just has so many fat stores because we've done this yo-yo dieting over and over again that it becomes difficult. It's kind of like the way I look at like exercise. Yes, it helps me look good in the moment, but I'm doing it for longevity, right? The way that I eat is for my health. And, take this and say, okay, how can I begin to apply this now so that I never have to worry about this? And I shouldn't say never struggle, because there are points in your life, being postpartum, where your body just is doing what it wants to do and recovering the way it wants to recover. The same with like my dad, right? Like he does his exercise, he drinks his protein drinks, he gets protein at each meal, but his body from the chemo is just thin, and we're just trying to keep as much muscle on his body as possible. So, a lot of women they fall into this like short-term results without thinking about the long-term success or vitality or what it looks like down the line. Obviously, we're seeing this very much so with the Ozempics. It's kind of like, just stab yourself, lose the weight. We'll get there later. We'll figure it out once we get there. The problem is you don't figure it out once you get there. You're just like, oh, yay, look at me, I'm skinny. You haven't set any foundations and you just bounce right back. And so, doing it very quickly too, there is a lot of research that shows the quicker you lose weight, the quicker you gain it back.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes too, it's not actual like fat loss. And if you're doing it really quick, there's a good chance there's a lot of lean mass in there and just, of course, a lot of water.
Yeah. I would also, it's interesting we're having this conversation because I saw my mom the other day and she was telling me about a couple of her clients who are on Ozempic. And I find that and it's similar to what I hear from Ozempic and with diets, and let's just put two in the same, is that a lot of times they're kind of attached to the results of like the scale weight, not necessarily like long-term health. They're looking for a specific number or the fear of the number. And there's an emotional attachment to that. It's like what it means to actually be 135 or what it means to be 105. And so they're not focusing on like, okay, but if you weigh 105 at 5'1" at 40 years old, like there's not a lot of lean mass there. It's probably just, your bare minimums of what you're meeting. And then in order to stay in that phase, you have to be on this restriction. And so they stay in the short-term restriction, only thinking I'll just get the results then. And then, like you said, figure it out, rather than like what you're saying for yourself is focusing on like, what does my body need to live? What does my body need to heal? What does my body need to build muscle? Then we can look at the like physical results and tweak it from there once I have the foundations.
Yeah. And it takes such an emotional toll on a lot of people. We do a lot of the IFS work in our work with our clients, internal family systems, and Dick Schwartz was on Huberman. And he was talking about, he goes, when you're trying to change the way you look to receive external validation and you keep, trying to be perfect, that's a lot of anxiety. And then when you're not perfect or you quote unquote fail because you went off the keto or you did something that was off these rigid rules, you then are kicking up a lot of what he calls your exiles, those feelings of shame and guilt and I'm not good enoughness. And what then happens is in an effort to put that out, put that feeling down, your kind of binge and fuck-its come in. Yep. And then you feel a lot of shame about that. And it just, and then seeing the body, so many women are like, oh, I felt my best at. It's like, did you? Did you
No.
actually feel good then? Because I bet you still picked yourself apart or you wanted more. So
Mhm.
even when you got there, like in your brain, you say now because you're in a bigger body that you
Mhm.
felt better then, but you still picked yourself apart. I know I did when I was
Yep.
at my leanest self. I was like, oh, I can't see the bottom two abs. I need to, do more and stay in this deficit. And it's just this like all of it, the obsessive like obsession of hitting all the foods, doing all the workouts, that burning out, then getting the fuckets and feeling bad because you went out with your girlfriends. That's a emotional toll. There's just so many layers to it. So then the next time you do it, not only are we going back into the restriction, but we also know it sucks.
Mhm.
And we think that it's got to be that way. And that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And
It's a good example of like when you're going through this is every time you go in this diet cycle that you're talking about, your body, as we said before, adjusts. It's a smart body. It wants to adjust. It's going to say, oh crap, Christina's going back in this restriction state. I need to hold on to some energy because I don't know if she's going to eat again on Monday. Right. Because perfect example, because tomorrow's Monday. And so, what that also doing is changing your hormonal profile. So, just like I told with this client that we are starting with this week, is it might be your hormones, but also not giving your body the energy for your hormones to exist appropriately is going to change that. We're also not listening to our hunger cues. So, for example, she's at a pretty low calories, and I'm like, man, are you hungry? She's like, well, I don't know. I'm okay. And I'm like, I bet we're pretty hungry at 1200 calories if we really were honest with ourselves.
yeah, absolutely. And so the other thing though, like you were saying about even like the hormonal profile is we don't realize like as we get older, like our gut microbiome changes, our digestive tract changes, like all of these are changing as our hormones are changing and our food can help us really negate a lot of these things just by eating certain types of food and eating in a certain type of way and not necessarily initially focusing on this deficit, but you're so in that mindset of like, eat less, eat less, eat less. I've said it once, I'll say it again. When you eat less, you're getting less nutrients and vitamins in your body because normally when people eat less, they're looking for higher volume of foods, which yes, there are low calorie, high volume foods with nutrients in them, but you're just trying to eat whatever you can to get through or even skipping meals and just having coffee or something like that. And that's really fucking up your gut, your digestion, the absorption of certain vitamins and minerals.
So I just want to give some short-term diet examples real quick because I feel like some people think like keto isn't a diet. It's like a way of how they eat, or paleo isn't a diet. And certain those diets or ways of eating do have their time and place, but what we're talking about is like extreme caloric restriction. So for example, I'm eating 1200 to 1500 calories. Like no grown woman should be eating that low. And even they'll say
or
like,
less than that on like Optivia.
yes.
It's like 800 calories.
Yeah. So there's that. Let's say if you're eating below 1500 calories, there's that. And I would change that into if I'm intermittent fasting and only having 2 meals per day, that's an extreme restriction. I would say keto is one because you're cutting out major food groups. You do not have to cut out major food groups in order to achieve the body you want. Juice cleanses is another one. Optavia, like you mentioned, snacks and treats and stuff like that. And then you have your detox teas, your fat burners, your quick fixes of like, drink this. Like we looked up that juice trend where they had to buy like $50 worth of juice per day. And it was like, that's not a thing. So even like, I would say substituting smoothies or meal replacements for actual meals is a quick fix diet as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I would throw in the Ozempics of the world if you're not doing it the right way, right? Because again, that's just putting you in a basically all it's doing is slowing down gastric emptying, which can be done naturally. It's slowing down gastric emptying and kind of turning off the reward system of the brain, which if you can eat in a certain way and train your body over time, it will naturally do that because you're fuller, longer, you're satisfied because you're not restricting these things and so on. But Ozempic definitely or semaglutide can be that quick fix as well. Now, again, we're going to have one of my friends and a fellow coach on who's used a GLP-1 and talk about her experience with it and what she kind of did because she sets more of the foundations around it. But we'll get to that next time. So how is she doing?
She found her voice this last week.
She's found her voice.
I know, which
Sing
also
it,
means
girl.
we don't sleep because that's like a, there, I don't know,
Mhm.
something about development. I'm like, that's great, but what about me?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the
So
mindset piece of this because I think it's so important that we recognize. So, like, for example, actually, my mom was telling me again the other day, talking about GLP-1s. She's got this client that she's worked with for, I think she said like 10 years or something. And she's gained and lost 100 pounds twice. And now she's on Ozempic. And I was
wow.
like, okay, but what led her to gain the 100 pounds twice? Like,
Twice.
that's something, there's something there. She's like, oh, I don't know. She's like doing well on the Ozempic. And I'm like, yeah, but what happens when she comes off? Like,
Right.
there was something
Well,
there.
how is it different?
Yes. Well, and how, like, what mindset shifts does she need to make this change last with the support of Ozempic? Like, if she comes off her, what mindset shifts did she miss when she lost the 100 pounds? And
Right.
it would be interesting if we just kind of were able to pick her brain. Because to me, 100 pounds gain and loss is a lot of like all or nothing, or using food as kind of like a control factor rather than like a sustainable factor or like a nourishing factor as well.
Right. No, and I will say, if you are someone who needs to lose 100 pounds, like you're saying, there is most likely a totally different relationship with food than just for nourishment. And so, in regards to the mindset set shifts, right?
Mm-hmm.
The key is moving from food as being the enemy, being something you need to eat less of, to literally the thing your body needs to survive, to have fuel, to I was talking to one of my clients and I go, well, where do you think you get emotional energy from?
Yeah.
He's like, rest. I go, technically, yes. But
Got me there,
food.
client.
Yeah. I was like, true. I was like, but your food. So your emotional energy, physical, mental, person, like social, spiritual energy, energy for work, like all of that comes from your food. But we have been so black and white in our thinking about food. Food creates fat, and that's it. It doesn't do anything else. No, it does everything else for you. And because we're in this kind of food is the enemy, if I eat less, I won't be fat. And you don't realize that your body literally runs on it. And all of the things that keep you in a healthy body get the food provides that for those reasons. And when we're looking at food more as fuel, as nourishment, as the energy to get up and go do the movement and the workout, for hormonal, to help, I don't like the word balance our hormones, but to help support us hormonally. That's what we get it from. So that beginning to shift it from this idea of food is the enemy, there's good and bad foods, to food is nourishing to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's both physically nourishing and mentally nourishing, and figuring out a way to get as much of the physical nourishment in a way that is satisfying, as well as the mental nourishment in a way that feels physically good and doesn't create shame.
Yeah. What you're talking about is essentially flexibility with your food. So
Right.
thinking of, because if every time you're using food, like we'll say carbs is the enemy, that's a common one. Well, broccoli is a carb. What you're doing is creating an all or nothing mentality. But then what we're telling ourselves is carbs are bad. Well, broccoli's a carb. Broccoli and cookies can exist in the same carb category. Now, are they nutriently, are on the micro and macronutrients different? Yes. And that's okay.
Yes.
But if every time I'm telling myself carbs are bad, then I'm not able to kind of understand the flexibility of diet. Like, it's okay to have a cookie. It's okay to have the cake. It's okay to have the ice cream. But how do I balance that and make it consistent so I'm not going through like these binge and restrict cycles, because that's an inconsistent thing.
Right. Well, and if you think about consistency, right, and what you're saying is, finding that balance and having the different types of carbohydrates and fats and the things and doing it in a way that supports your goals, that's so different than the keto diet, right? For example, where they're like, no, you can't. What we're saying is, if you can create, yes, I can, and I'll figure out how and what serves me, I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to get to my goals, and I'm going to do it in a way that is satisfying, which ultimately creates more consistency, right? When I you were talking about broccoli, and I was thinking about the person listening who's like, I fucking hate broccoli. If you hate broccoli, don't
eat broccoli.
eat it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, eat something else. And in our 4-step sustainable eating quadrant, we talk about this with our clients. What are the foods that are both pleasurable and nourishing? That is what you want to have the majority of your diet be, right?
Yeah.
And, there's this, again, we're going back to that all or nothing, that black or white thinking of, if I'm eating healthy, I'm eating raw ass broccoli. Gross. Is that healthy? Is that healthy?
Yeah.
Is broccoli healthy? Sure.
Yourself.
But if you fucking hate it, you're mentally working against yourself.
Yeah. Force feeding yourself health is not.
Yeah. It's like, all right, let me eat this. I mean, I know people who are competitors who literally be like, I've been standing over this container, like trying not to vomit because that's all I could eat. And it's like, that is torture. Yeah. And so the other part, though, is that we need to begin to realize, if I'm doing this gradually, I'm doing it right. Mm-hmm. If it's happening quickly, I'm doing it the wrong way.
Yes.
And I often see this in the first couple weeks of our program, right? Where clients will start like losing weight pretty gradually because they're getting kind of in that, I have a coach, she's watching me, I've got to do it perfectly. And I'll come in and kind of like, so if you the way I think about it is like, they have a desk and all their papers are like perfect, right? And I come in and I go, psh, and I mess it up, and I'm like, nah, I'm messing this up. Why am I messing this up for you? Because I need you to get out of this perfect fail mindset, because that is ultimately going to cause you more issues long term. Right? Mm-hmm. Because you're not going to be able to do this all the time. And because you can't do it all the time, rather than seeing what you're doing as the failure, you're going to see yourself as the failure. When we can gradually do it and, learn along the way and find what works for us, that is where we want to be. Almost slower that you do it, the faster you'll get to the outcome that you want.
Well, and changing that focus again off the weight. Changing that focus to, am I getting stronger? Am I gaining weight there? How is my energy? Like you talked about with your client, of where are we getting this energy from? Do we feel like we have more energy throughout the day? I had one of my favorite stories is one of my clients. She's an optometrist, and she was going back to back with clients or patients, I guess it would be. Mm-hmm. And she was getting behind on her work. And she's like, I just feel so drained by the end of the day. And I'm like, well, are you having lunch? No. And so I was like, surely you get a lunch break, right? And she's like, well, yeah, but I tend to like try and catch up on work during it. And I told her, I want you to eat during that lunch break. Well, it turned out she started doing that and then was caught up on work all of a sudden, because she had the energy throughout the day to be more efficient and to think clearly when she was with the patients. So how are we feeling energy wise? How are we feeling like overall? Like, do we feel good when we wake up? Do we feel well rested? Like a lot of times with the yo-yo dieting, every time you're on this diet cycle, you're waking up tired and lethargic and you're like, okay, or you're going to bed starving and you're like, well, at least my body will eat my fat while I'm laying here. And so it's like, no, we need to wake up.
Well, and then you wake up a bunch because you're fucking hungry.
Yes. Yeah. Wake up ready for the day. And how do we go from there? And like, how do we celebrate these small victories of like, my sleep improved, my progress pictures show a difference that has nothing to do with the scale. My measurements are improving. I'm not as tired and like bitchy at the end of the day with my kids and my significant other. I feel like I can, like for you right now, you've got a lot of going on mentally and physically. So you're in a lot of different places.
I'm so tired. Yes. I'm exhausted.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of different pieces that are taking mental energy. Well, how do you kind of make sure you're eating enough so that way you can show up for your dad? That way you can like actively listen to the doctors and be his advocate. For me, like with the baby not sleeping consistently and I'm waking up every hour to 2 hours, it's like, okay, so what do I need to do throughout the day to adjust that to make sure that I feel good? Right. But if I was in a weight loss phase right now, it actually might hinder my progress if I'm focusing on the scale.
I want to take that just a step further of go back to why you're doing this, right?
What is the why?
What is your why? You're going to say, because I feel better. Okay, but why? Well, because I'm eating more nutrient dense foods, but why? Like we think that you're going to have this confidence and this, newfound happiness by hitting a certain weight. That's not true. Like, stop fucking lying to yourself. It's not true. because mentally we haven't done the work, but maybe I'll be a devil's advocate here that you do feel a bit better. You may have more energy because you are kind of maybe in your rigidity eating more fruits and vegetables and proteins, and you're drinking more water, and you're walking and hitting your 10,000 steps because you're getting out in nature. We're going to say in the black and white brain, like, that's just my diet culture. I felt good because I'm skinnier. No, maybe I felt good because I did those things, right? And how can I make that work for me? So like you're talking about, so that I can feel that long term and actually accept that why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling is because I'm eating the right foods majority of the time. I'm hydrating myself. I'm getting out in nature. I'm getting some sunshine. I'm walking, right? That makes me feel good. But in our brains, we say, no, the skinny did it. Skinny has the power.
Well, and thinking of like, that's all, like, I would say those things are perfect for creating sustainability. But say you didn't get the 10,000 steps for a week, say you didn't get out in nature, you didn't have like the more nutrient dense meal, like that is not necessarily a mistake in my opinion. That's more of a, okay, what happened this week that changed that we need to address? And does this happen continually, or is just a one-off thing? And using those times of the perfect fail mentality, all or nothing thinking, black and white, as a way to think about how can we make progress from this point? What did we learn this week? So when I talk about, oh, my diet failed, like I just can't stick to it, what could we have learned from that? What was the diet like? Maybe if we think about, well, why is that important to me? That, like, let's go to the Optavia. Why would you think that would work? Oh, because it's very structured and it tells you exactly what to do. Well, does that work for your lifestyle? No. Okay, so now we learned like a more structured program may not be the best opportunity for us to have success in this. And so just even finding with the diets that have failed, or the times that we did yo-yo diet or binge and restrict and cut calories and restricted to make up for the weekend, like there's a learning opportunity there. There's something that we can gather of what works for you and what works for your lifestyle. For example, keto. Like, oh no, I ended up having like the cookies. It's like, well, yeah, because that's not really sustainable. So is cutting carbs sustainable for the next 5 years? Yeah. Then no. Right. And that's going to help avoid like those guilty cycles of like feeling bad because you couldn't stick to the rules. And then the shame of like showing up at your friends and they're like, oh, I thought you were on keto. And you're like, oh yeah, it didn't really work for me. Or I just can't stay with it. Like we're going to take that all away if we can create something that's sustainable that works for you and your lifestyle.
Right. I want to just tap into something real quick too. So physiologically, what also can happen, and again, research is out on this, but I've seen this. Oh, I've seen the effects of this. Is two things. Number one, when we do this restricting, you talked about the body kind of holds on to it because it doesn't know if it's going to get energy, right? It doesn't know if it's going to get fed today, because is today a restriction day or is it a binge day? Yeah. So restrict. The body says, I am in an energy deficit. Like I am not fed. And I do that so often that I teach the body, okay, remember, I'm not going to feed you. So when I do feed you, the body's like, well, I got to store this as fat for energy. So I'm going to store these, I'm going to create more fat cells. Ultimately, is this kind of controversial research that we have more fat cells in the body. Plus, when we are in this kind of, deficit, really, or lack of energy, our body also is going to get rid of the thing that takes up most energy. And compared to subcutaneous fat, your lean muscle mass burns about 6 to 10 calories per something or another. And your subcutaneous fat burns about 2 to 3 calories per like gram, or I believe it is. So I'm not only going to store more fat, but I'm going to go after that lean muscle mass. That metabolically is going to happen because I need to conserve energy, and I need to store energy because you've taught me that you're not going to feed me. So it's like a hibernating bear. I think we talked about this before. Like I'm just going to store and store and store because I know that food is not going to be available to me. And for the bear, I don't know how bears work, but then also getting
if I imagine a bear did work this way.
Huh?
I said, imagine if a bear did work this way.
I know. And it's like, and I'm going to get rid of my muscle too. Right. So that's number one. Number two is also this idea of binge and restrict. So I have low blood sugar, and then I have this huge spike in blood sugar, and then low blood sugar and a huge spike in blood sugar. And your insulin, your blood sugars are all over the place. And this isn't exactly how insulin resistance is caused, but this yo-yo dieting can definitely affect your insulin levels, making it even more difficult because we don't have anywhere to store the excess insulin or excess blood sugar, from these big binges or even just the off diet side of things, so that it again stores it as fat.
So that study that you're talking about is a thing. Stronger by Science had a good excerpt on it a couple years ago about fat cells and just like the almost like the memory of them. The other thing too, that you were talking about, the insulin resistance, is you don't necessarily have to be in a larger body to be classified as having like insulin resistance or diabetes. Like we've seen women who are in smaller bodies, like what society would consider skinny, in kind of like an insulin resistant state, type 2 diabetes, because of the surge of sugars essentially that come in when they're binging or overeating and when they go off the restriction mindset. So that's something to be aware of as well.
I brought this up and I just want to read it. It's from the American Diabetes Association. Research shows that yo-yo dieting may increase insulin resistance, a condition that occurs when your body can't efficiently use the insulin it naturally produces. Insulin resistance can lead to type 2 diabetes. For those who already have diabetes, it can make conditions far more difficult to manage. That's not all. Yo-yo dieting can also result in a loss of muscle mass. Overly restrictive, low-calorie diets often lead to muscle loss along with fat loss. When you gain weight back, most of it tends to be fat rather than muscle. Having a higher percentage of body fat increases insulin resistance and slows your metabolism. Because muscle burns more calories than fat, your body isn't burning as many calories. So not only are you setting yourself up for high blood glucose, but you're also more likely to hang on to the pounds you gained back. All right. So building sustainable habits. Let's teach you what to do here.
Yes.
So I want to say one of the biggest things you can do here is understand that it's going to take time to kind of reverse where we're at. And a part of getting to where you want to be physically, mentally, and emotionally is going to require you to get uncomfortable. Because what I like to do with my clients is I like to build some muscle in their body, get them to maintenance, stay at maintenance for a good amount of time, get their macros and micros in alignment and their relationship with their pleasurable foods in a good place first. Because I will say I have done this the wrong way. I've done this the wrong way with people who I've worked with recently. And now as I continue to educate myself, I say, okay, we're going to change this up. We're going to try this. Well, I won't say that. I like to give my clients autonomy in how they eat. But if after a while what they're doing isn't equaling what they want, then I really have to get a little bit more I have to have a little bit, with their types of foods they're eating. So those 4 things that I listed are going to take time: building muscle, eating at maintenance, getting your macros and micros in, right? Making sure the other things in your life, like the relationship with self, is in alignment with where we want to be, and getting a good relationship even with your pleasurable foods. Like that is going to take time, especially if you've been doing this for a long time. Yep. So just recognize, again, the longer this long-term kind of lifestyle that we're creating will get you to your results quicker and more sustainably. So I just want to say that because a lot of women come into our program and we're having to reverse a lot of things that maybe worked even a couple of years ago, but their body's finally just like, fuck you. And I'm sure you can agree with this. It can be like you saw them maybe a year ago and now, or you knew them a year ago and they did all of these things. Now they're coming to you because they're like, it doesn't work anymore. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I want to emphasize that what you're changing or what we're changing is one thing at a time. We're not going, hey, you need to hit your water. Hey, you need to have more veggies. Hey, you need to have more protein. Hey, let's get the strength training routine. Like it's one thing at a time. So let's go back to the new client that we have. She's just a good example right now. And so, for example, she's doing like 7 days a week, 30 to 40 minutes on the Peloton and then some Jillian Michaels app later in the day. And I'm like, why don't you work out every day? What I'm going to do is just an upper lower split. So that way you are working out every day, but she doesn't know that I'm actually modifying it so that it's not as much volume as like a true split program, right? But I'm giving her a workout essentially every day. But it's not at the volume that she would perceive it to be at. And it's something new. And for example, too, like clients who come on who are maybe only having 60 grams of protein, we like a bare minimum of 100. I'm not going to take someone from 60 to 100. We're going to go to 65 first and then 70. Yep. And then once they start doing that on their own, creating the autonomy of increasing it and being like, oh, I got 75 on average this week. I'm like, great. What do you think is sustainable next? Like, do you think 90 is like achievable? Because that would essentially be another meal. Or do you think maybe just going to 80? And I let them decide after some time, but with giving them help and support along the way. So like meal prepping, planning ahead, making choices that are like simple swaps. So maybe instead of like the pasta when you eat out as a side dish, maybe we do the vegetables. Now, are they still high calories because you're in a restaurant? Yes. But are there more nutrients in the vegetables compared to the pasta? Yes. So it's still choosing things that leaves it up to them as well.
Yeah. My client Kelsey and I just had this conversation because we just added a fiber goal. And she's been with me for about a month and a half. So we really got her to a place where she's actually one of those clients that's, hits all the targets. So I actually messed up her desk and I said, okay, I want you to not track ahead one meal. And we're going to do some work around that. And, really kind of getting her out of that black and white thinking. And now she feels good about hitting her protein targets. And now we're introducing the fiber target because she wasn't having enough. And so it was one thing at a time. Now I'm thinking about a client who I did a check-in for, and she goes, I feel like we're focusing on so many things. Now, this is the client that's been with me for a while. And as a coach, I listened to her message today and I was like, okay, maybe we do need to take a step back because I assume this is a step down client. So I give them, I believe they're much more ahead than like a one-to-one client who's just starting with us. And so for her, I have her focusing on, 3 workouts per week, 9,000 steps, and really getting more colors in her meals, not having naked carbs, because I do believe she's insulin resistant. Not having naked carbs, pairing her carbs with a protein or a fat, making sure she's obviously eating throughout the day. Now, that sounds like a lot. And I need to go back to her from that comment and say, okay, it sounds like this feels like a lot to you. Do we need to just go back to the basics? And that's okay, even as someone who's more advanced, right? To be like, it's okay to come back to this too. So I want you to hear that too, not just, oh, I'm new and I make gradual changes. But even if I've been doing this for a long time and it's just not working, or I'm in a new life situation, which she's in, it's okay to go back to, which I'm going to have that conversation with her tomorrow.
Well, and I think honestly, you and I are perfect examples of this, like right now. And because I think a lot of people put coaches on a platform that we've got all of our stuff together. We just know how to execute it. But like right now, your life is messy. My life is messy. But our basics are there. Like me and one of my bare minimums is I have to meal prep. Like I don't necessarily know what I'm going to eat tomorrow, but I know what I have to pull and throw it on a pan to get it warm. Right. One of your basics is I have to get movement in. So I take the stairs at the hospital instead of maybe doing a workout.
I did a workout in the room today.
There you go. So it's like, you have to think like those are our bare minimums. Those are the basics that make what we're doing sustainable. Right. Now, does that mean we always take the stairs or do we always meal prep? No, but it's one of those things of like, if I don't do it today, we're going to find it tomorrow.
Or just having those things in your fridge, like the chicken nuggets, right? Yes. Or I made that 5-minute meal, which was, steamed they're called sheet vegetables from Costco. I had pre-made chicken and a 90-second quinoa and put that together with some teriyaki sauce. It was delicious, Or like I don't meal prep. I know my foods and I know how to make them quickly. However, with my dad being in the hospital and being in ICU, it's been a bit harder because ICU, you can get in between 5 and 6:45, and then they kick you out between 6:45 and 8. So I wake up at 4:45, I get ready, I go to see him. So I can hear when the doctor comes in and whatever, they kick me out. And so I walked over to First Watch, and one of my non-negotiables was get as much protein on this plate as I can. So I had this chicken pesto quinoa bowl and added egg whites. I had the dressing on the side. right? Actually didn't even eat the dressing because there was something on it already that was delicious. And the tomatoes were like fire roasted. So they just brought a lot more flavor. Yeah. And then today for breakfast, I did the same exact thing. I walked the first watch as well.
There you go.
I had an egg white ham and cheese omelet, and it gave me one piece of toast with some butter. I put jelly on it, and then I had maybe a little less than a half of the potatoes because I was like eating them and I was like, I don't love these. So, just having these non-negotiables for sure. And like just figuring out, where can I start with that, right? Where can I start in creating a plan ahead, whether it's just a mental plan, I'm going to add egg whites to the meal, or like your plan, I'm going to meal prep this, even if it's one thing I meal prep for this week, it'll be a thing I can use universally or not universally, but use in different meals. So I think like when Mark was gone last week, I meal prepped ground beef. So I'm like, I can make this and put it on different things.
Oh, yeah.
So figuring out how we can make it easy to plan ahead. What we don't want you to be doing is adding more to your plate, pun intended. We want to make it where you don't feel like you're actually saving time with these different things you're doing.
Well, for you too, is practicing the flexibility, right? So you're not able to eat at home right now. So you're going out and you're ordering conscious choices that work within your like goals still to this point.
And I'm fucking tired. I mean, I cannot tell you guys how exhausted I am. So like making something to take to the hospital, which is something I've done. Like I do that when I go get my hair done. Like I have my food ready, but I am in a different mental space. So that doesn't mean I just stop doing the things. I just educate. And this is where coaching comes in, where I can be like, okay, let's look at your options here. What can we do? Right? Rather than you have to do all of these things. What can we do right now? And coaching can be huge in that, like learning how to make these small choices and increase nutrient dense foods. That quinoa bowl had spinach, tomatoes, quinoa, chicken, then the egg whites on top of that, like boom. And it was so good. And it didn't feel breakfasty till I added the egg whites after they brought it out because the first I thought it had eggs. But anywho, educating yourself, getting coaching, learning how to add these things in again without adding more time or adding more to your plate or without this like perfectionistic mindset is going to be huge for you. And the beautiful thing about what we do is it's so custom to each person that it's your plan. It works for you, and every single person's plan is different.
Well, and I think too, going back to both of us right now is like, we're not ignoring our hunger either. I think easily let's take me for this example, postpartum. What a perfect opportunity for me to not eat, right? To try and lose the weight. Like if I'm already have my sleep schedule all messed up, maybe I don't wake up when I normally have breakfast. I could push it till lunch and all of that. But what you're not doing is creating a sustainable habit. What you're doing is ignoring your hunger and you're pushing it off. But then what happens when you do start noticing I am hungry for breakfast or I am moody? So this is like eating when you're hungry is appropriate. Eating when you can is appropriate. But like we're saying, be flexible with it. So like, for example, for me for breakfast, sometimes breakfast is what I've got in the fridge and I throw it together. Does it necessarily look like a breakfast because it doesn't have eggs? No, but that's okay. Instead of making so sometimes rules and restriction and dieting comes from rules that you've made up by yourself as well, just that you've taken away from different diets and trends. And so that's something to be aware of. So for example, it was funny because I was talking to Jenny because I'm trying to increase my carbs and take away because I'm getting like 200 grams of protein, but it's just because I'm so used to like adding in protein. She's like, let's try some more carbs. And I one night, bananas are really easy for me to eat, obviously, because you don't have to prepare them. And you can eat them pretty quickly. So good. I like had a banana at like midnight. And then the next day at like 8, I was like, oh man, a banana sounds really good. I was like, but I already had a banana. And it was like, I made up some rule that I can't have 2 bananas in a day. And I was like, why is that a rule? It's so weird. But understanding that, like, if you're hungry and you're craving like a banana, have the banana, even if you had a banana 3 hours ago.
I have chocolate twice a day, every day. No, I agree with that. Like focusing on your hunger, fullness cues. And for those of you like, I'm never hungry, then that's a
That's a
big
sign.
red flag.
Yeah.
Like huge red flag. If you're not hungry, then that metabolic adaptation is real, real.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I talked to Laura about this. There was a woman on one of the forums that we're in who
Coach
reached
Laura.
out to me and she was eating 100 calories a day and saying that she has adapted to this and she's been sustaining this weight for, she says, a couple of years, and that she's gained muscle and works with a personal trainer and works out every day of the week and has anorexia. So
I don't understand what you could even eat that only has 100 calories.
right now, everyone on this forum was like, that's not possible. That's not possible. Like, no, it's possible. It's possible, but at a great expense to
Yeah, to your
yourself.
diet.
And I explained it in an email. She didn't like my response, and Laura had tagged me in the thing. So then I explained it again, and she's just very, nobody believes me that this is my reality. You're the same person that doesn't believe me. This, that, the other thing. So I just blocked her because I'm like, I'm not going to argue with your eating disorder.
Right.
Right. And she was
who's
like,
your
and I'm never
coach?
hungry. Huh?
Who's this coach? That's not like,
It's a personal trainer.
well,
And honestly, that personal trainer, that gym,
fired.
well, that gym can get in a lot of trouble, especially if the trainer knows that that's all she's eating. I personally would be like, I can't ethically
Work with you.
do this. She could die on that gym floor
Yeah.
because your heart is an organ, right? And your body can start eating at it.
Oh my God.
That's not exactly what happens, but we see resting heart rate in the 20s and 30s for people in her position. But she did say, I'm never hungry. And you know, a lot of that information, that sound was very disordered. However, if you're not hungry, it's not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Your body, again, going back to Olivia, she knows when she's hungry since the day that little baby came out. She knows when she's hungry, and she'll fucking tell you, and she'll tell you when she's full.
Yes.
That doesn't change. You choose to make that change, or your behaviors create change there. So starting to, even if in some of our clients, we just get some liquid in the morning with some calories, right? Just to start getting their body to be like, oh, you're feeding me again, right? We don't want them to feel overly full because they haven't eaten in the morning, but just starting to get them to reconnect to their hunger and fullness cues. And then, of course, the sustainable eating quadrant. Now, I'm not going to go over it in detail here, but we renamed it to the Resilient Woman Reset Challenge starting March 31st. I'm going to create with you your own sustainable eating quadrant specific to you, your exact foods in each one of those quadrants, teach you how to eat those foods, and basically remove any of the good versus bad foods that you have in your mind. We're removing that from it doesn't even exist anymore because it's not an option. So we're not going to go over that there. If you want the link for that, it's in the bio. And what about movement in this yo-yo dieting?
Yeah. So, I mean, you could consider yo dieting part of movement too. Like, it's not just what you eat. So what that looks like is, oh, I work out every day. And then all of a sudden I don't work out at all, And so this is like with the 75 hard. Okay. So they work out 75 days in a row, maybe. And then what happens? So when we look at movement, we have to do something that you enjoy. If you truly don't like strength training, that's okay. We can find other ways to get strong. Maybe that's body weight movement. Maybe that's taking like more of like an aerial yoga class where you have to pull yourself up on the thingies. I'm just thinking of like something totally random, or even like the pole dancing. Like there are people who are the rocking bodies who do pole dancing classes, and you have to be strong to do that. Like that's another form of strength training essentially. But even like you're using, for example, I'm walking to first watch, I'm taking the stairs, looking at movement in a different form of it has to be this exact way, because that's the same diet mentality that they prey on. Like in order to be successful, you have to eat this exact way. In order to get the body you want, you have to move this exact way. And it's just not sustainable at all. So, like, for example, I've got a client who does 2 exercises 5 days a week because that's what works for her in the morning. I've got another client who works out 3 times a week because that's what works for her. And so it's finding kind of this mix of flexibility with that too. So another client I'm thinking of in particular, depending on her client's location, because sometimes they're international, her hours shift. So she may not do a morning workout. She may do an evening workout, and she may not get to it that evening, but we have it where she can break it up throughout the day as well, because she has a home gym.
Yeah. I would say that's where I struggle because I do enjoy working out in the morning. But like with my dad, so Friday, I did a 20-minute workout and that was it. Like 20 minutes in our on-demand program. So the Mindset and Movement program, I did the 20-minute full body workout and walked for 10 minutes, knowing that I'd be walking everywhere over the hospital, right? And took the stairs and did all the things. Didn't work out Saturday, didn't work out Sunday, walked as much as I could. Then today, because for those who don't know, my dad is also blind. So I had a chair in the ICU and I did Bulgarian split squats, push-ups. I did rows with the chair. I did tricep dips and I did some just like seated single leg squats. So did that twice.
Okay.
So got a little workout in. Yeah.
Well, it's like even if you travel and you're in a hotel room, there's a workout that we can do in the hotel room. You don't have to not work out, but also there is a beauty to having structured rest time too. So I do want to warn clients with that, because someone will take this away and be like, see, you can work out all the time, every day. And it's like, no. There's rest opportunity here as well.
Yeah. So just again, takeaways here are start small, start with what you can start with. Look at your worst week where everything is going crazy. What can you do for yourself? What does that look like in regards to nutrition and movement? Start there. Focus on those non-scale victories and how you're feeling. Focus on how you're actually acting differently. We didn't even talk about that. How is this different than the last time? I think that's a thing that people really struggle with. They think that when they're doing the right way, they often compare it to the wrong way, and they have a lot of fears of failures. But we have to reset and say, the facts are I'm doing this correctly, and focusing on how you're making these changes. Coaching is huge for that. If you're interested in coaching with us and having that customized approach, you can check out the Clarity Call link below, or you can look at our brand new website where I have literally everything up there. You can look at literally what every program costs. So,
you added in the pricing?
Well, there's a link to the EverFit payment now.
There you go.
So, yeah, for those listening, people think that if you share prices up front that people will run away.
I disagree.
Yes, if you don't know what's involved, right? If you're just reading and being like, oh, that's too much for me. Well, if you're just, that's fine, but there's a lot more to it. So, and just remembering, like, this has to fit into your life. This is going to take time. It's going to require you to get uncomfortable and do things you haven't done before and get into that gray area rather than that black and white thinking. And that will take time. But again, you do this the long way, you'll get to your goal faster. Anything else?
I agree.
Perfect. Well, if you guys like this information, please make sure you've hit that follow and subscribe button wherever you listen to this podcast or watch us on YouTube. Also, make sure that you follow us on Instagram where we have our little reels and different things. We're coming out with new content with our new podcast, VA. And if you like this episode, please give us a 5-star rating and review. Or if you just like us, please give us a 5-star rating and review, as that helps us get out to more people. And other than that, we want to leave you with this one last thing.
What you say in the mind,
you see in the mirror. Goodbye.
Goodbye.